Okay, thank you for joining me. This video is going to be a little bit different because normally I narrate while I'm creating the painting, but I was actually going through a little bit of some rough news right here and really just wanted to focus on creating, so I'm doing a little bit of a voiceover after the fact. So here I'm going to be making some earth-toned hex tiles, and I'm going to be starting with my pillow paint, which is my Gliddens Essentials white interior house paint with the eggshell finish. So you can see here I add my little blob, and then I'm going to spin it on my spinner just to kind of even out the pillow and to make sure I got a good amount on there. Also helps me see if I'm going to have enough to reach the edge on all the sides. When you spin it, it also gives you a good idea about whether your tile is centered, which can play a role later on if you are trying to spin out your design. If it's not centered, it can make your bloom go a little wonky. So for this one, I use a different combination of some blues, browns, a little bit of a green, and a little bit of shine with some of the metallics. I was kind of going for a beachy kind of neutral, which is very different than what I usually do. Starting off with Artist Loft's Prussian blue, which is one of my favorite colors, but it is very overwhelming if you use too much of it, so you notice I did just a little dab of it right there in the center. The next color I'm going to use is actually one of the Decoart Ready to Pour colors. This is the Rose Gold Metallic. So it's kind of a pinky kind of sheen to it, but it gives a little bit of sparkle that I thought would blend in well with the browns and the metallics. It ends up almost looking kind of silver. The next color I have is actually a really old one. It's the Anita's All-Purpose Acrylic in Earth Brown. It's got a really good kind of dark tone to it. And I did try to balance between dark and light color, so on top of that I'm putting the Decoart Ready to Pour in Sky Blue. This next one is the Decoart Ready to Pour in Beige. And then lastly, the color right before my cell activator is the Decoart Ready to Pour in Mint Green. So I did use several of the Ready to Pour colors, but because I did have a couple of different brands, that does help with the cell formation. Just the different reactions between the different brands of paints can help you get some really cool effects. For my cell activator, I'm using Amsterdam's Oxide Black. That's mixed with the Australian Floetrol. I mix it about 1 to 3, gives me a good cell formation. And then as I'm blowing, what I really need to focus on when I do this is to make sure that I'm blowing across the paint, not down into the paint, because I don't want the pillow to show through as much as possible. And you can kind of see some white spots there when I was blowing on it, which meant I blew down just a little bit too much. It isn't always a bad thing, but it typically where you see the pillow come through, you won't really get a whole lot of cells. So if you're looking for cells, you don't want to blow too far down, you want to blow out and across. Then I'm going to give it a really good spin. I really do love this spinner. My husband and my children got it for me for Christmas. It's the 12-inch Paroma that I got off of Amazon. I think it was around like $29 for around Christmas time, but it's got a really good weight to it. It spins really smooth, and I just use some clear shower caps over the top to help protect the metal and keep it from getting a bunch of paint on it. Then here I think I was trying to do a scoop and drag, but really I probably should have done that before I spun it because there wasn't as much paint left to spread out at that point. Here, as I'm spinning it, the goal is that I want to get the paint as thin as possible when I spread out the bloom, but mainly because I want it to be pretty thin at the end so that when it dries evenly and I don't get any cracking. You'll notice that as I spin, I'm going to be checking the sides, especially with the hex tiles because there were so many sides, to make sure that I got good coverage. And you can see here I use my finger or use my tools to kind of help dab some of the paint across the edges just to make sure I got paint all the way down the sides. You want to spin enough times to where there isn't movable paint in the middle anymore. So you'll see here in just a second, I actually could have just picked up the tile itself, but I was trying not to mess up the edges too much. But as I tilted here, I'm looking to see is there any movement of the paint in the middle. When the paint stops moving on the tile, that tells you that it's thin enough for you to go ahead and stop. So I'm going to touch up the edges here, and you'll see me in a minute pick up the towel to get ready to transfer it to my drying trays. So really for the rest of this video, I'm going to mute myself and just let some music play, and you'll see kind of the same color combinations a couple more times, and fast forward, and I'll slow it down so you can see the blowout process with the cell activator. But I'll jump back in if I had any additional comments and show you what the final results look like. So as you can see in this one, I did the same color order. I did notice that I used a little bit more of the colors in this one than I had in the first one. That first one had more white spots in it, so I think that was what opted me to try to do that. But I also was a little bit better, more controlled with my blow, and was able to keep going into the pillow and having those white spots. And then here you can see I was questioning whether or not I had enough paint to get the paint to the edges, so I added a little bit more of the pillow just on the edge to help it kind of roll over so that I didn't lose the pattern and the paint was able to slide off the edge of the tile. This one you can see a lot more of the blue in the center, kind of the peacocking of the cells came out really pretty on this one. As I was blowing this one out, you can see right away I was getting some really great cells, which told me that I had put enough cell activator down and I had spread it thinly enough that the cells were able to form pretty much immediately. I know this one I didn't wreck, but I could see very easily this one would have been a good one to wreck just because of how the cells really kind of were created immediately there. Gives you a good idea about what the final outcome is going to look like. Okay, let's jump back into the spinning. For this last tile, it's always interesting when you watch yourself afterward, because I noticed that on this one I used the most paint out of all of the other tiles in terms of the colors. And it also looks like I used more of the cell activator, so as you kind of play and get a feel for how the colors are interacting, you can kind of make those judgment calls to figure out what you need to do to get the best result. And here you can see I'm tilting a little bit because the pattern had already started to slide off of the tile on the one side, so I didn't want it to all go off that side. So you can see me kind of tilting it to bring it back to center. This was one I remember I really liked because the blue it had in the center really kind of came through. It's one of my favorites. That's going to wrap up this short video. I'm going to show you some quick screenshots of what the final products look like, and I hope you will join me for another video. Be sure to click on the subscribe button, and I'm happy to hear any comments or feedback, or even things that you would like to see in some upcoming videos.